Hi, I'm Steven Wallis and I've teamed up with the wonderful guys at Chefs for Foodies. Today we are going to be cooking their ultimate Christmas box with a beautiful rolled turkey fillet, some delicious sides, recipes that I've designed. So we're going to relax, take our time, do some great cooking, a few little tips, a few swigs of wine, enjoy the morning. For this recipe, you're going to need red cabbage, some onion, some red apples, the dried cranberries, we've got some butter, we've got some lovely red wine here, some brown sugar, some wine vinegar, some star anise, of course some lovely Maldon salt and a cinnamon stick, and some orange juice. So I'm going to show you how to make, how to prep the red cabbage. It's actually really simple because we're going to shred the cabbage, the onions, the apple, and it's literally going to go all into one pot. We're going to simmer it, stick the lid on, and in about an hour and a half it's going to be all done. So the best way to really prepare this is end off, cut it in half, half again, and then make sure you just take out the core, and you can take out a couple of the outer leaves if they're a bit damaged. And if you've got a rabbit, or actually keep these for some stock, but by all means don't waste them. So literally this is the easiest way, into quarters, and then shred really quickly. Yeah, so actually what you want to make sure is when you're chopping this, you do want it fairly thin because it'll just help cook it down far quicker and far easier. I mean, it's going to braise for a good hour and a half, so it's had plenty of time, but it just, I think, allows for a nicer texture. So all this, just chop it straight into the pot. Then the onion, again, chop it in half, take off any sort of bruised, damaged outer skin, and simply just slice it. So you've got nice pieces. This is, again, it's going to cook down. I also quite like it when it isn't too fine because you want some strands, you want some texture. There we go. So we've got a lovely couple of apples here, nice russet apples. My kind of easy, lazy way is just chop them like this rather than trying to decore them. Do that, and then you can just chop off those little bits, give them to your kids to chew on. So again, similarly, just the apple into sort of small dice. The apple's great because it adds a nice sweet note, and also the enzymes in the apple also help break down the cabbage as it cooks. The way I've usually just chop is I've just sort of taken a piece, I've chopped down, and then what I do is I use the knife, the end of the knife, and I'll rock it. So make sure that my fingernails are away, and then I just literally rock the knife backwards and forwards using my knuckles here as a guide. So it's, again, really simple, and you don't get any fingernails in your chopping. So all the apple can go in. So give it a bit of a mix. So literally now everything else goes in. So I'm going to put in the sugar, the star anise. I'm going to go with a nice couple of pieces. This adds such an incredible fragrance. I'm actually going to go with 3 because I love it. This is your wine vinegar. The sour note is really important. So in goes the red wine. A good pinch of salt. And the butter I'm going to actually use at the end. And the dried cranberries I'm going to add half now to let them cook down. The other half I'll add towards the end. So the last thing I'm going to add into this is some orange juice, which will add a really lovely citrus flavour, and a cinnamon stick. So in that goes. So this is going to be lid on, so on the stove for a good hour. Keep stirring it, keep checking it, but a really low simmer. It can also go in the oven, but stovetop is best. So for this recipe, you will need turkey fillet here from a 3rd generation butcher, amazing welfare. We've got some prosciutto slices, some fresh thyme, Maldon sea salt, black pepper, which I'm going to crack, and some olive oil. Right, so now that the braised cabbage is cooking away, it's on a low simmer, lid on, you can kind of leave that, stir it occasionally. Now we're going to go on to this turkey. So we've got this beautiful fillet. It's from a 3rd generation butcher. Make sure that you take it out of the fridge and give it some resting time. It'll come in some plastic, take it out, let it breathe, which is really, really important. I'm going to dress this with some prosciutto, which will just add a bit of surface protection, and a really simple dressing of some seasoning, so some fresh thyme, salt and pepper. First thing I'm going to do is just lay down some fresh thyme leaves, like a little bed. Bit of salt and a bit of pepper and a smidge of oil. Now this is turkey breast, so it's quite dry. There's not a lot of fat in turkey breast, so this is why we're adding the base of oil and the prosciutto slices. So take our breast and we lay it on top. So then we take our prosciutto slices and we just tuck them under. And you don't need tons, just a nice layer. And prosciutto is great, you can just literally tuck it in. And then we're going to finish this with, again, or we can also tuck it just underneath, which is a nice way of keeping this in place. So just a bit of thyme. We don't want to overdo the flavors. And again, not too much, but a bit of salt, a bit of pepper, another drizzle of olive oil. And then that's going to be ready to pop in the oven. And we're going to foil this up first so that we don't lose too much of the moisture. It almost steam cooks, and then halfway through the foil comes off and we bronze everything. Now the key thing we're also going to use is a thermopen, and this is really about getting the inner temperature to 77 degrees. So we're not looking at time, we're looking at temperature. So we'll be checking and probing the meat in the middle to make sure that we get to the right temperature. It's going to just 2 lots of foil, one way. Ready. In an oven, 170 degrees. You don't want the oven to be too hot because it's going to scorch and burn. So you want a nice, good slow cook on this. In that goes. So for this recipe, you're going to need carrots. We've got some maple syrup, some smoked salt, a bit of brown sugar, and optional some chili flakes, and some salted butter. So we've got the turkey in the oven. We've got the red cabbage braising away nicely. I'm about to have a sip of this rather delicious wine. And actually, let's do this now. Cheers, everybody. So now I'm going to go on to the carrots, and I'm going to cook these again in the oven, easiest way. The first thing I'm going to do is line the baking tray with some foil, because this has got both maple syrup and brown sugar, which will turn into a sticky tar that's almost impossible to get rid of. So lining the baking sheet, and I'm literally going to tumble the ingredients through and into the oven. Right, so here's your tray. Tumble in our carrots, and we are going to sprinkle over the sugar, which is going to caramelize beautifully. I'm going to hit it with some chili flakes, a good pinch of smoked salt. I also hit it again afterwards, at the end of the cooking, with more smoked salt, so I don't over season it right now. And then I'm going to pour over the maple syrup and just make sure that all the carrots get some maple syrup love. So over that goes. We'll also make sure that whilst we're cooking, we can turn these once or twice. And then the last thing is some butter. This is Christmas. We are using butter with absolute abandon. So in the oven that goes. So the carrots have gone into the oven. They need 40 minutes. So for this recipe, you'll need potatoes, some rapeseed oil, a few garlic cloves, which are optional, and a good hit of Maldon sea salt. Okay, so now we're going to move on to the potatoes, kind of the heart and soul. Good roasties are everything with a good Christmas lunch, trust me. I'm keeping these really simple. I'm going to add a little hint of garlic, because I like a bit of garlickiness to the potatoes. We've got lots of great flavors, so actually a simple roastie done well is great. First thing I'm going to do is add my rapeseed to the pan, and I'm going to heat this up, get this nice and hot. Into the oil, I'm going to put some garlic cloves, which I'm literally just going to bruise with the flat of my knife. I don't want to chop this up, because if I chop it up too small, it's going to burn. And actually, I want to keep the skins on, because again, the skins are going to help protect the garlic. So 3 bruised cloves, and they're going to go in, skins and all. So we've got our potatoes. In they go. I'll just bring this over. Oil's in, quick hit of salt, and then in the oven these go. So we're halfway with cooking the braised red cabbage. There's a few more things I want to add to this to sort of finish it off and finish off the cooking. So this is where we're up to right now with our cabbage situation. Lid comes off, and you can see now how much it's really cooked down. You've got some amazing flavors going on. The cinnamon is giving off all the wonderful smells. So now I'm going to add in the rest of the cranberries, the dried cranberries, and these will soak up all the other juices that are in the pan. The last thing, to emulsify, I'm going to add the butter, and I'm going to stir that through and let that cook for about another 40 to 50 minutes. Lid goes on, and this goes back on the heat. So for this dish, we're going to need parsnips, some polenta, parmesan, freshly grated nutmeg, some rapeseed oil, and sea salt. So parsnips, really simply, just peel. These can be a bit tough, so you need a decent peeler. I'm going to chop the end off. And then for these, I'm going to quarter them. And these are going to be parboiled. Salted water, and I'm literally going to parboil these for 10 minutes until they're just soft. So whilst the parsnips are parboiling, I'm going to prepare the crumb that they're going to cook with. And for this, I'm using some polenta. Into that, I'm firstly going to grate some fresh nutmeg. I love the fragrance of nutmeg in with parsnips. They seem to work really well together, and I'm being quite generous here with the nutmeg. So a good, maybe a quarter, and then the Parmesan. And this is also going to add some salty umami tones. Okay. Final bit of sea salt. And I'm also going to add in some black pepper. Black pepper and parsnips is a match made in heaven. And I like to actually add a fair bit. That is our lovely crumb. So I'm just going to mix that together. And this is going to coat the parsnips, like so. Okay, so we've just taken the turkey fillet out. It's had, I don't know, a good hour, maybe an hour and 20 minutes. What I mentioned earlier was we're using the thermopen to just test how it's cooked the inner temperature, which is going to get to 77. Now, obviously with all turkey fillets, you're going to have a thinner end and a thicker end. So what we need to do is get our probe and test the thickest part. So that's going to go in, not all the way through, we want to go right into the center, 58.6. So this does need probably another 20 minutes in the oven. But I think if I push the probe into the ends, this is going up to the mid-60s. Get some foil. So I'm actually going to cover each of the ends with a nice little foil hat, because I want the middle to cook, but I don't want the ends to scorch or dry out. Gather some of the juices, which we have here, and I'm just going to do a light baste just to make sure things are nice and juicy. A little bit under here. Make sure that it doesn't get dry. So that is going to go back into the oven, and then we're going to temperature check it in about 20 minutes. So I've just brought the turkey out of the oven. I've hit it with a thermopen. It's hitting the magical number of 77.3. So we're done. The most important thing now is to let this beauty rest. It's going to allow the muscle fibers to relax back and get tender, because at the moment they're going to be like this and it'll just soften up. I'm going to cover this in foil. It's going to go and rest over here where it's nice and warm. Meat doesn't need to be piping hot. So what will add the heat to the dish is we've got hot gravy, we've got hot roast potatoes, we've got hot parsnips. So you've got plenty of elements that will be hot, but your meat doesn't need to be. So don't worry about it not being piping hot. The other elements will be. Okay. So we're going to finish off the parsnips. So these have now been parboiled, so they're nice and soft and tender. What I'm going to do to these is I've got a tablespoon or so of rapeseed oil. So I'm just going to drizzle that over our drained and parboiled parsnips, like that. In here I've got the mixture of polenta, Parmesan, nutmeg, and a bit of salt. And what I'm going to do is just layer some of this over the tray as a little base, and then I'm going to tumble over the drained parsnips. So I'm going to give that a bit of a shake, rattle and roll. The polenta is going to add a nice crispy dimension to these. The Parmesan will melt and get all crunchy. And then literally the last bit we sprinkle over. So really simple. And this will toast up really nicely. So make sure everything is well covered. So here we are. And of course, any leftovers, fabulous with pasta. Back in the oven these go for 20 to 30 minutes until they're golden brown, and then we're ready. So now our braised red cabbage is done. It's had some time to sit here. I'm going to show you what this looks like. Look how soft and supple that's become, and all the beautiful juices have sort of helped the cranberries sort of swell up. You've got the wonderful cinnamon, which I'm leaving in, and it's quite nice to leave in the big pieces of spice to dress the serving bowl that you're going to put this in. The last thing I'm going to do is just try a little bit, just for seasoning, because you want to make sure that at the very end it may need a tiny bit more salt, a bit of black pepper, or if you want to get really racy, a little zest of, orange zest or even lemon zest, just to pep up the flavors. It's really soft, and all the spice and the red wine is in there. Really perfect, not too sweet, not too acidic, just lovely. Platter. So for this recipe, you're going to need stuffing, which we will turn into balls, fresh thyme, chipolata sausages wrapped in bacon. So I find this is so much easier to cook these with a skewer. So not only does it give you a bit more sort of, they're just easier to handle rather than trying to lift off 600 of these things off one baking sheet and having a nervous breakdown. So literally take a skewer, get 5 or so onto one and onto your tray. You don't need to oil the tray because the bacon already has quite a bit of fat on it. And pop these on. These are going in the oven as they are. So this is a really simple stuffing. Again, we've got lots of flavors going on. We've got that delicious turkey. We've got the really fragrant spiced red cabbage. We've got the parsnips with polenta and parmesan. We've got Brussels sprouts going on. So really, we don't want to overload. So this is a really simple stuffing. The only thing I'm going to add to this is a tiny bit of fresh thyme. I just want to increase the herbalness, because there's something quite nice about that fragrant herbal hit from thyme. So sometimes I find the easiest way to cook stuffing, if it's not in balls, is to do it in a roasting tin, which you can then pop into a tin, cook it, and then carve it up into easy slices. So I'm going to just butter lightly the tin. So in goes your butter into your dish. I'm going to scoop in this very sticky mixture and literally just tamp it down, just to make sure that nothing burns while it's cooking. Take your stuffing, little spatula, and smooth up the top. Doesn't have to be perfect. I'm going to add a few more little knobs of butter on the top so it doesn't dry out. So that's pretty much it. So that's your stuffing in a loaf tin into the oven. So for this recipe, we've got Brussels sprouts, we've got lemon, we've got some chicken stock, we've got some white wine, a little bit of rapeseed oil, we've got some butter, we've got some salt, we've got some garlic, some bread which we're going to toast up and blitz, some fresh herbs, we've got some parsley, and we've got our bacon lardons. Okay, so this is our Brussels sprout dish, which I'm going to cook with lemon, some chicken stock, some garlic, some herbs, and I'm going to finish it with a really fantastic pan grattata, which we're going to do in here. So simply end off, take off the outer leaves, and then cut it in half. This will also reduce the cooking time. Also, I'm going to be pan-searing these in some olive oil and garlic. So we're going to get a bit of caramelization on them as well. I've got some garlic cloves, 3 fat cloves of garlic, which I'm going to roughly chop. I don't want these to be too fine. Again, I'm going to cook this on a fair amount of heat. And if the garlic is too small, it's going to burn, which is going to go into a shallow pan. And also the other tip as well is, don't add your garlic into sizzling hot oil. Put the garlic into a cold pan with your oil, and that way you'll extract more flavor without it burning straight away. And then this goes on the heat. So in go the sprouts. So once you start getting a fragrance from the garlic, literally add in your sprouts. I'm going to hit these also with a tiny bit of salt. So what I'm looking for, like here, is a nice little bit of golden color. So now the sprouts are starting to pick up some lovely color. What I'm now going to do is deglaze the pan with white wine. So ensuring the alcohol burns off. Once it's had a minute or so, I'm going to add the chicken stock. The heat comes down. The lid will go on for about 10 minutes. Okay, so look at these lovely, crunchy, we've got our lovely roast potatoes. What's really great is these are piping hot. We haven't parboiled them. Sometimes I think parboiling, you can get like overly mushy potatoes, and I like the hard crunch. So if you kind of cook these long and slow, you get that lovely crunchiness. The last thing I'm going to do to these is hit them with some extra salt. So while they're still hot, the salt is going to stay in. And just to show you the crunch, I mean, ouch. But look, perfect. Chef's treat for later. So our carrots are beautifully glazed and cooked. The maple glaze has turned into this almost like a caramel. So the butter here, all the juices, really stunning. The last thing I'm going to do, take a bit more of the smoked salt and just give them a final hit, just to cut through that sweetness. So we're just going to literally plate these up, and they're all done. So now we have our pigs in blankets, all done. Look at that, on lovely skewers, really easy. So pop those on, we can pull those off. And again, these don't really need much in the way of seasoning. You've got the bacon in there already. Fabulous pigs in blankets. So our stuffing is done in the tin. It's just an easy way of cooking this. So you can literally out of the tin, and then what I like to do is then plop it out. Oh, look at that. And then the trick here is we can just chop it into sort of bite-sized pieces. We can then cut this again in half. And then, so it's a bit like flapjacks really. And then you've got the nice crunchy bits on the ends. So you've got nice textural elements. So there's our stuffing. Really simple, really easy, all ready for the table. Okay, so fresh out of the oven are our beautiful parsnips with our polenta and parmesan. So I'm going to plate these up. And I love how these have kind of got that crunch, and they've got that lovely sort of dusty coating to them. The parmesan's got a fair bit of salt. You really don't need to add any extra salt to these. And voila, our parsnip polenta parsnips. Okay, so now we're just going to prep the pan grattata, and what I want for this is just to cut this in half, like so, and bang it in the oven. 10 minutes or so just to crisp up, and then it's going to be given a blitz in our KitchenAid blender with some bacon, lemon zest and herbs. Talking of bacon, we've got the bacon lardons in here. I'm going to go into a cold pan, and I'm going to cook this down and render off all the fat. So for the pan grattata, I'm going to be using some fresh herbs, some lemon zest. The juice I'm going to put into the sprouts. So to this, I'm going to add some fresh thyme leaves. And I love fresh thyme, it has such an incredible flavour. I've got some parsley here, which I'm going to take the leaves and then give this a good fine chop. So the trick is with chopping herbs, especially parsley if it's quite a coarse, is chop it up, make it manageable first, and then go in with your knife and start to chop it down. Don't forget the blender's going to be doing lots of the hard work, but I want to get this to a fairly rough chop. There's our parsley. I'm going to zest in, or add in the zest of this lovely lemon. There we go. It's a lovely lemony, herby element. Allow these to render down. So these have changed colour. They've gone lovely and soft. The butter. And now with the lemon that I've used, that I've zested, and obviously making sure you don't get any pips, I'm going to add the juice of half a lemon. So making sure you catch any of the pips. So I'm actually going to turn the heat off of those, cover, and let them infuse. So pan grattata, really simple. These are literally like fried breadcrumbs. And what I'm not going to do is fry them, because I think we've already got quite a bit of, we've got the butter and the sprouts already, the sort of lemony, buttery, white wine and stock emulsion. So what I want is a bit of texture. So I've basically taken this bread, I've dried it out in the oven. And what I'm going to do is, before I add it into our KitchenAid blender, is I'm just going to chop it up into chunks so that it's easier to break down. So it's also a good idea to do this in stages, because what you don't want to do is plonk it all into the blender, do it all at once, and it doesn't give you the right texture. So in these go. And that makes incredible light work of breadcrumbs. I'm going to add in my chopped herbs, so there's some thyme, a little bit of thyme, lots of fresh parsley, and my lemon zest. And that's going to go in next. And then we've got this lovely, almost green, emerald green crumb, the drained bacon bits. And I'm literally just going to barely touch this. So that, final blitz, and then we're done. Simple as that. I'm going to add these crumbs. And as you can see, look at the colour, really beautiful. So you've kind of got the herbs, the bacon. So that's our pan grattata. So our sprouts, which have been braised with white wine, with stock, with some lemon juice. And these are a bit of a different way. They've almost turned a lovely pinky hue, but what's nice is they've got lots of flavour from the chicken stock, the garlic, the wine. They get this beautiful topping. Kermit green pan grattata. So again, adding this lovely fresh hit of herbiness. The other thing you can also do is you can pop this in the oven for another 10 minutes and it'll crisp up as well. So there's our Brussels sprouts, braised with lemon and with a herb and bacon pan grattata. This is the contents of our ultimate Chef for Foodies Christmas box. We've got our beautiful heritage turkey breast fillet, which we've wrapped in pancetta. We've got pigs in blankets, we've got stuffing, we've got roast potatoes, and 4 incredible side dishes that I've designed with the guys here to really kind of add some extra sparkle magic to Christmas, to the cooking, to some flavors, but yeah, lots going on, beautiful things. With that, we've got our wonderful gravy, we've got some cranberry sauce, and if you need it, we can also supply excellent wines from Uma Wines. So enjoy this, enjoy the box, enjoy cooking it. I've had lots of fun. I hope you do too. Gonna say Merry Christmas, have a wonderful day. Cheers.